Good morning, everyone out there in LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook that are seeing this live broadcast. It is fantastic to be joining you on this Wednesday morning, and I have a fantastic guest with me today. I am super excited. I always talk about neuroscience or how a lot of the body language work that I do is brain based, and it's sort of like, neuroscience beats body language. But now today we have a real live, honest to goodness neuroscientist with our Dr. Irene Salter with all of you. She is based in California, but today she's coming to us from New York. So she is Eastern time. She is the founder of Inquiring Minds, which is her coaching and consulting firm. She works primarily with leaders, and her specialty is in coaching leaders to come from a place of self-awareness, curiosity, and vision. So using all of her neuroscientist language and all of her experience in that field and translating it into helping us use our minds to better cope with our everyday as leaders. And she's fantastic. And she works a lot with teams as well, helping them to shine brighter, and she does a lot of work with collaboration and professional development. So definitely connect with Irene on LinkedIn, or we'll put her contact information and her website, which is simply irenesalter.com. So you can remember that. We'll make sure that all of that is in the notes and things. So without further ado, we are going to welcome our expert on stress resiliency, which is what we're going to be talking about today. There is so much talk out there and blurring of the lines between stress and other things. And so welcome to Irene. Here she is with us today. Yay.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me on this live broadcast. And if I missed anything in the bio or other things you want to highlight, be sure to stick those in. You want to stick around till near the end, everybody, because she has a retreat coming up that we're going to be telling you about, and you don't want to miss us talking about that. But I thought we might start with the definition of stress, or at least for today, for our conversation today, how are we defining stress? Because it's gotten taken in so many different directions these days.
Absolutely. Allison, thank you so much for inviting me. I am a PhD neuroscientist. I got my training at UC San Francisco, and I did research on stress and the brain systems that underlie how our stress response works. Back when I was an undergraduate, I got to work with Robert Sapolsky, who's one of the premier stress researchers on the planet. He studies animal models of stress in baboons in Africa. And from that research and all the way up to the present day, the understanding of what stress is it is a physiological state. It's an emotion that we feel, and it's a state in our body that we also feel. So it's a sensation and it's an emotion that comes from our biology. It's common with all mammals, and it's the way that our bodies respond to threat. And it evolved because of a really important response to life-threatening types of events out in the world. So that's what stress is, but it is different. Like Allison, you mentioned, we talk about stress, we talk about overwhelm and burnout and exhaustion. All of those are related, but somewhat different. And we can talk more about what that biology is and the brain science as well. It's fascinating stuff.
Well, absolutely. And I love the fact that we're getting right to the core. I think a lot of times people don't correlate stress to their emotional response. Mm-hmm. And they think that they're just stressed because it's an outside thing, or it's having too many things to do on their list, or there aren't enough hours in the day, and they make those kind of excuses, but they're not seeing the emotional toll that it's actually taking, because it is this emotional response. And it's basically if I'm understanding you correctly, it's kind of keeping us in that fight or flight
Mhm.
raised level of anxiety. And that's, of course, not good either. And it's no wonder that stress is related to so many health conditions, or stresses can
Yeah.
be, uh, you know, we can look back and see, okay, this was a
Mhm.
time in my life when I was super stressed. Gosh, it's no wonder that now I have this chronic disease, or other things that are related to that biological part that is connected
Mhm.
to stress. So how does stress kind of like connect to the brain, or to the emotion? Like, is there a does the emotion come first and then the stress? You know what I mean? Like, is there a which comes first, the chicken or the egg, or are they kind of simultaneous?
Great question. I'm gonna launch into a little bit of a biology lesson, if you don't mind.
Oh, awesome! Here we go, everybody.
The
Listen up.
the key point for all human beings, though, is that stress is something that you have a lot more control over than you might think. A lot of times people think of stress as something that happens to you, and then the stress response happens and you don't have control over it. And I want to bust that myth right away. That is absolutely untrue. You have a lot of control, both mentally and physically, over the stress response and how it plays out in your body. So, I want to give you some tools if you're interested on how do you manage that. But first, you got to know the biology. So, the way that your stress response works is there's a trigger out in the world, a stressor. It's usually something that a person feels is threatening to them. And if it's easiest to think about it, if you are out on the savannah and you're living life as a gazelle and suddenly a lion jumps out at you, like that lion is your stressor. And what happens biologically, and this is how our stress response system evolved, is that it triggers a whole cascade of different hormones and endorphins and ways that our brain releases different chemicals. It's this whole cascade that's designed to trigger a really adaptive response. You want to escape, you want to run away, you want to hide. And that's where the fight, flight, or freeze response comes in. So it's a very coordinated way to get your entire body and nervous system all geared to getting you out of that life threatening situation. So, what happens is that certain systems are amped up and certain systems are suppressed. So, you amp up the systems that you need to fight, flight, or freeze. And those would be like your major muscle groups. So you really want to activate those. So you send a lot of blood there. Your heart starts pumping really hard and you start breathing faster to get more oxygen into your system. So those systems, your respiratory system, circulatory system, your muscular system gets very activated. On the other hand, you can suppress anything that's long term. So reproduction, don't need to worry about that. Don't need to worry about digestive system and like digesting your breakfast. Those things are not important for right now. So you can shut all of that down. And another key one that they shut down is the immune system. Because if there's a bacteria around, you don't need to fight it in the next 3 minutes. You need to escape from the lion. So you divert all resources away from that and towards your heart, your lungs, and your muscles. The other really interesting thing that happens is in your brain, because in your brain, you divert resources to focusing with laser accuracy on the stressor. And all other things kind of fly out of the mind. But that means that some of your executive functioning, your ability to problem solve goes away because you're so focused on that lion and the immediate thing that you know what to do to get out of that situation. Everything else goes away. So your brain gets hyper laser focused on just one thing and it loses the ability to be creative. It loses the ability to see larger context and big picture. It loses the ability for real, true problem solving because it will latch onto that first thing and just go for that. But the problem is with long term. So it's 3 minutes of terror when you're out on the savannah. But here we are in our modern day world, and we have 30-year mortgages, and we have a 3-year horizon, and we have a 3-month deadline. So that stress that we feel that those things are threatening to us And so our stress response gets activated and it's sustained. And that's what's the chronic stress. And that's why our bodies are all out of whack. That was a lot of biology.
A lot of issues with leadership
Mm-hmm.
or or your teams and things, because if everybody is focused on that one stressor, which is the client changed the deadline and we're not ready, or the client added, you know, to the scope of the project and now we're all stressed about it, as you say, then if the entire team is kind of hijacked
Mm-hmm.
from their creativity and the ability to problem solve this issue. So how do you um, encourage your leaders to notice on their teams, and then I'm sure everybody's thinking, okay, well, that's really great, but what do I do about it? So, what are some, I know you have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of tips in here that you use with your clients on how to mitigate some of the stress. Well, first of all, acknowledge it or see it and
Mm-hmm.
notice that it's happening. But then what can you do about it to, I guess, if it should be a mini stressor before it becomes a huge, chronic stressor, that how can they uh, manage in that moment to kind of de-stress the situation?
And Allison, this is where your work and my work start to align
Right.
because it's about how do you notice stress in your body? And everybody has a different way of noticing it. Some people hold their stress in their shoulders. Some people hold it in their heads, right? And your face kind of gets really tight. Some people hold it in their stomachs. And so each person has a different place where stress lands on them. And that the next time you feel like you're really stressed out, that there's a threat to you, just notice where in your body that feeling lands. And the way that the emotion plays out, like you asked, how does it play out in your brain and your body? You're the first thing that happens is that you detect a stressor, right? That detection system will cause that flood of different hormones and brain chemicals, and it will start to create that tension and activate those some systems and not others. It will begin to do that, and that's why you feel it in your body first. Then there's this feedback loop that goes back and forth between the brain and the body. So the brain senses in your body, oh, there's tension there. There must be a stressor. What's going on? And your brain starts to really focus on what it is that stressor is. And then the emotions start to feel it, right? You start to feel stressed. And it's a feeling, it's an emotion that is actually present. But then that feedback system can also work in your favor. And this is where you have control. As soon as you realize there's tension in your body, you can consciously choose to relax that and not allow your body and your shoulders to get tense or not allow your face to tense up. And instead, you do things both with your body and with your mind to recognize this is not a life threatening thing, right? Your client changes the deadline. That's not a life threatening event. And so you don't need to activate your stress response to deal with it. Instead, you need to keep your creative mind, your problem solving mind active and engaged. And to do that, there's a ton of techniques. I call them brain breaks. They're 20-second to 2-minute interventions that you just like. The easiest one is simply breathe. Because remember how your heart rate and your breathing gets faster? If you intentionally slow your breathing, that will slow your heart rate. Your brain will get that signal. Oh, you know what? I'm not breathing really fast. I must not be stressed. This must be something that, was a passing thing. Everything's fine. So as soon as you bring your brain and your body into a place of safety, calm, peace, and security, then you can actually regulate and control your stress response and not let it overwhelm you. And it doesn't take over. And now you can bring your creative mind and your problem solving mind back online.
See, everybody, why do I tell you to breathe all the time? This is one of the main reasons why we say to start every meeting with a
Mhm.
collective breath, right?
Yeah.
With everybody, leaving what they just came from, the stress of wherever they were or whatever
Mhm.
project they were working on, to leave that at the door and then come in and get everybody's energies collected and take a few breaths to bring everybody into some kind of present moment versus
Mhm.
thinking about what's coming up or what they just left or all
Yeah.
of those things. So there's and I, as you say, this is where the body language and this uh stress neuroscience recognition can come in, because wherever you hold your attention, when you realize that, that's why you should know then to, if you hold it in your shoulders, okay, whoa, I'm like way up here, like, let's, okay, drop the shoulders,
Mhm.
breathe into that area, move it around, wiggle it. What same thing
Yeah.
if you, if you tend to hold it in your butt or your gut, to just relax it. I often tell leaders to have a fun playlist ready on their phone for any moment, and you take a little dance break in the middle of the meeting and you make everybody, I mean, they will resist it for sure at the beginning, but once you force them out of their chairs and have them all have to do the Macarena together or something silly, that they're all doing YMCA and the whole, I'm totally aging myself, but if any of the 20-year-olds still know what that is, they still do it at weddings, so I assume people know what this is. But if you get everybody moving together, it just, and then laughter, of course, increases your use of oxygen and all of those things. So definitely these brain breaks that Irene is talking about, first of all, call her and have her come into your team and illustrate and work with them on this. But second of all, just brainstorm on your own. What are some things that I could do to stop the train, or wherever it's headed, or to intervene in this
Mhm.
moment. And even if it's just, okay, we're going to, and sometimes I say, bring a soft ball or a like beanbaggy kind of ball that's really easy to catch, and just like whip it out at somebody and then start tossing the ball around the room or something. And even say, okay, whoever has the next idea, go into brainstorm mode, because that will, again, if you're clamping down on that creativity and your ability to brainstorm your way out of the situation, it's forcing you to do that opposite. And I talk a lot about opposites when it comes to body language. Just do the opposite of what is happening right now to get you out
Mhm.
of it. If
Yeah.
you've been leaning really, really far forward and you're getting really stressed because you're, again, laser focusing on whatever that stressor is, force yourself to lean back and tell your body that everything's okay and that you're relaxed, and that and sit into the chair, because that will give your brain a different signal again of, okay, so the stressor must be over, I can relax now. And I love that idea of just kind of telling the brain, no, it's okay, especially because we do have the ability, and that is the difference. We kind of let our subconscious brain take over, or the limbic brain just, we think we don't have any power over it. But the conscious brain, that's what makes us different from the other animals in in the
Yeah.
world, is that we do have this conscious brain, and we could say, no, this isn't life or death situation.
Yeah.
Somebody cutting you off and you almost getting into an accident, that for a moment was kind of a life or death situation on the highway, and you're breathing hard, and you're, you let the stressor, as you sit on the side of the road and go, oh my gosh, I can't even believe. And then you're like, and then you're mad, I can't believe that jerk cut me off, and and you go through those things. But that for that moment was, but then, get the body back in control. Okay, I still have to drive this car to my meeting. Let's calm
Mhm.
down. So I love those tips. Um,
I love what you said about opposites,
hmm,
because what you're doing is the things that the stress response automatically does, you're trying to do the opposite. So another great way to calm your nervous system is to intentionally focus on sensory things that are here in the present, not past, not future, but like just what is a sensation right here in this moment, and focus really tightly on that just for 20 seconds. So like get a cup of tea and savor it as if it's the first time you're tasting tea for the first time. So you smell it, and then you take a sip and you let it linger on your tongue. And that kind of a practice, which is fully sensory, remember your digestive system shut down. If you put your attention on the opposite, on the ones that are shut down, suddenly you can calm that nervous system and make that stressor kind of go away in the brain and in the body.
Wow. Right. That is such a great tip. Yeah. I could totally see people doing that, or bringing, particularly if they're working from home and they happen to be, somewhere like, I'm even thinking right now, like my chair is like I don't know, it's a fake velvet covered or whatever. But
Mm.
even if I just concentrated on, oh, this chair is really, the tactile, the softness
Mhm.
of the chair, or
Yeah.
how my body is sitting in the chair, where do I feel the pressure points, and can I change those pressure points,
Mhm.
and things like that. Yeah, it's just giving your body something else to think about,
Yeah.
which is good. The body and the brain working together. Um, I know that when we talked, we'd gone off a little bit, and I'm curious, and we only have a couple minutes left, but that whole limbic system, like impacting how we're processing
Mhm.
things. So I know we've kind of touched on it, but is there a is there anything else that you want to say kind of about the brain and its actual processing of the stress, or how we better use the brain? We've talked about those strategies, a lot of
Yeah.
kind of interrupting strategies, but what would be kind of the next level?
Another level to think about, and it's very aligned with the stress work, is the emotional brain, the limbic brain. And that, again, just like with stress, you have a lot more control over your emotions and your limbic brain than you think. So, a lot of the latest research on emotions is how emotions are, again, a conversation between what's happening in the brain and what's happening in the body. And it's an interpretation of that interaction, of that dance back and forth. So, for instance, if you're feeling what you might think is anxious, I'm feeling really anxious, I'm kind of tense, I'm worried about something that's coming up in the future, there's that bit of anxiety there, right? What happens in your body? Well, you get tense, your muscles activate, you kind of hunch over, but there's a different story you could tell, that those same feelings in your body are also related to excitement. And it's a slight different spin, but the same body, things that happen to our bodies for anxiety is the same ones that happen for excitement. So if you can do a mental shift and tell a different story about what's making you anxious, wait a minute, maybe there's a hint of excitement in there as well. And you tell yourself that mental story, it'll change how your brain interprets the physical sensation, and suddenly something that was feeling anxious and negative turns into something that's exciting and positive. And you have control over this more than you think.
Mm.
So there's another way that you can actually use your biology for good and change the way that things are and the way that they land on you.
Oh, that is such a great tip, because I do so much with speakers and presenters, and they definitely get anxious before they, or nervous, in that same feeling that you were just mentioning, before their name is called, or they go out on
Mhm.
stage to do their thing, or all the TEDx talks that I coach. But what a great shift is to say, well, that's because your body is really excited to share your story with them, or to share the
Mhm.
talk with them. So it's, key into that excitement of, and use that energy then for good, as you said. That's super fantastic. So everybody out there, oh my gosh, I know there are so many of you that are going to be watching this after we're done today, because it will show up on your feed, and then you're going to be like, what, a neuroscientist, we need to listen to that. That definitely contact Irene, and get her into your groups, because this is huge. But I want to give you a minute to talk about your Heroine's Journey retreat that is coming up on Memorial Day weekend, and I'm going to post in the chat here the um it should come up. Where is it? There it is. The link to find that, and it's okay, I see it here. There it is. Okay. So that's where you find more information. But tell us a little bit about this retreat, and who it's for, and how they sign up, and all that good stuff.
Talk about excitement. Like, this is the thing that I am so excited about. So this is a partnership between myself and Tootie Tagerly. She's another executive leadership coach. And the two of us are teaming up together to bring this to women leaders out in the world. The premise of it is like a three-way strand. We're doing a lot of leadership development as part of this program. And so we're out in the woods for 4 days, 3 nights, in Mendocino, in amongst the redwoods, in these glamping cabins. And we are going to be leading folks through a lot of this. How do you embody leadership? How do you find your voice? How do you show up as the brave, empowered, amazing person that you are in all of its authentic, integrated forms? So we're hoping that people can not just show up as a leader, but bring all of their wealth of experience and knowledge. So I wouldn't show up just as a neuroscientist. I'd show up as a neuroscientist and a former school superintendent and a coach and a mom. And that we try to help people bring all of those aspects of themselves to their leadership. And that's part of the leadership development. And that's why we call it a heroine's journey, because we're trying to help people become their own heroine and bring all aspects of who they are to their journey. So that's one aspect. But then the other one is deep, deep connection. So meaningful, lasting networking and connection with other really visionary, inspiring other women leaders. We've been separated and disconnected for too long. It's really time to get together. So we're keeping it to a super small group, between 10 to 20 women maximum, so that we can really develop those connections and get the heartwarming part of that relationship building. And again, relationship building is a key to stress resilience. The more that you have in your tribe and in your connection and your network, the more resilient you are. So that's another aspect. And the last one is adventure coaching. So think of this as we are facing unprecedented risk and uncertainty and change in our workplaces right now. The best way to be able to navigate risk and uncertainty is to know how it feels in you as you're going through it. So we take our leaders through really adventurous, fun, awesome things: night hikes and sea kayaking through caves along the Mendocino coast. And we use those experiences as ways for people to get in touch with, how do you step up into somewhat scary, what seems like risky and uncertain types of situations? How do you navigate that in this little controlled, fun environment? Then how can you bring that back to your workplaces so that you can show up with dealing with risk and uncertainty in a more powerful way?
Oh, wow. So that sounds like the best of so many worlds. Not just your average leadership retreat, but uh, experiencing nature and all of that great stuff as well. So if for any of you out there, if this sounds like, oh my gosh, there isn't a better way for me to spend 4 days than doing those things and bringing them back to my organization, you definitely want to check this out, because there aren't, I mean, in my experience, there aren't too many leadership retreats that include, that aspect of it, the,
Yeah.
as you say, putting them in uncomfortable situations. It's either all that, like, okay, we're going to go zip lining and it's just going to all be trust exercises and all trust falls and all that sort of thing, or it's all, okay, leadership and whatever. So the blend that it sounds like you guys have achieved is really exciting. And oh, that's so great. All right. So everybody out there, definitely connect, go to irenesalter.com, find out more about everything that Irene can bring to your organization, or one-on-one if you are a leader that's like, okay, I need to bring this, the rest of my company isn't necessarily on board with this, but I've got this little time, I've got this little bit of professional development money that is mine to use as I choose, right? Before the end of the year, which is going to be here before we know it. We just have summer and fall, everybody. It's, we're trucking right on through 2022. Make sure that you think about doing that, or hey, using that little pot of money to go on that retreat. That would be totally awesome. So thank you so much, Irene, for being here. This has been fantastic. One of the most interesting conversations I think that I've had. I totally love everything that you're doing, and I think it works really well with a lot of the things that I do more sometimes, I guess, without knowing as much about the scientific basis of it as I should. But yeah, this is really great and so timely, because right now, as you say, we are experiencing so many changes and so much of uncertainty in both the outside world and our inner worlds and our day to day. It's just we think it can't get crazier, or we think it can't get more different or harder or whatever, and then we kind of seem to keep upping the ante on ourselves in the world lately. So the ways that you've talked about being able to handle stress are so important. So everybody, listen twice, take your notes, and make sure that you put this into practice, because it's really, really important, and you will be better off. Your health will be better, because the chronic stress, of course, is not good. And we know, especially when it suppresses your immune system, that is certainly never good. And for your teams as well, and for the people in your life, your family members. It doesn't have to just be business. It can go, it's personal too. And that's the other thing that I love about that leadership retreat, bringing all of yourself. We're finally realizing that we shouldn't compartmentalize, and that we bring our whole being to everything that we do. And that's the same thing with the Presenting True to You programs and things that I do. It's about you as whole being, not just you as, this is my speaker persona, or this is my leadership persona, this is my sales persona. No, that you can be the same person in all those situations. And I think we saw definitely authenticity today in practice with I will say Dr. Salter just once, but because that's impressive. All right, everybody, have a fantastic day, and
Thank you for having me here. It's been an honor.
this has been great, and I will end the broadcast. Everybody, take care.